There is a reason certain pages never make it to print, a reason some chapters sit locked inside hard drives instead of bookstore shelves, and tonight the whisper moving through London's publishing circles is louder than ever. Insiders are claiming that investigative author Tom Bower is sitting on 3 additional chapters about Meghan Markle that were considered too risky to publish, not because they lacked material, not because they lacked sources, but because the legal stakes were simply too high. And when you understand who Tom Bower is and what he has already done, that rumor alone is enough to send shockwaves straight through Montecito. This is not a novelist chasing attention. This is the man who wrote Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, the 2022 biography that dissected the relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle with a level of detail that triggered immediate debate across Britain and America. Bower is known for sourcing aggressively, interviewing dozens of insiders, and constructing narratives that are legally vetted before a single word hits the page. He has built a career on pushing right to the edge of what defamation law allows and staying just inside it. So when people inside publishing say there were chapters that even he decided not to release, the implication is not casual. It suggests caution. It suggests risk assessment. It suggests legal chess. And that is where the tension begins. Because Tom Bower has never pretended to be neutral. He has publicly criticized Meghan Markle's conduct within the royal institution. He has questioned her decision-making, examined her pre-royal Hollywood relationships, and scrutinized her post-royal media ventures. He has dissected the Oprah Winfrey interview. He has analyzed the fallout between Harry and Prince William. He has written about the breakdown of trust between the Sussexes and King Charles III. But what insiders are whispering now is that the manuscript that became Revenge was longer. He reportedly interviewed around 80 people. Not all of them were quoted. Not all of their accounts were printed. Some claims, according to Bower himself, and interviews were excluded due to strict British libel laws. That matters. British libel law is notoriously claimant-friendly. Publishing something without ironclad documentation can lead to costly legal battles. Even if multiple sources confirm a story, if documentation cannot be produced in court, publishers can face significant damages. Bower has openly acknowledged that certain material was removed from his final draft because it could not survive that legal threshold. And now, the rumor is simple but explosive. Those 3 risky chapters are still there, locked away, unpublished. Let's rewind to the original impact of Revenge. When the book launched in July 2022, it immediately dominated headlines. It revisited Meghan's time on Suits. It examined her relationship with her father, Thomas Markle. It detailed alleged tensions between Meghan and Catherine, Princess of Wales. It analyzed the early friction between Meghan and palace staff. It questioned strategic media decisions following the couple's move to California. The Sussex camp did not cooperate with Bower. There was no authorized access. The book relied on interviews with people who claimed to have observed events directly. Some of the book's claims were disputed. Some were strongly denied. But legally, the book stood. And that is what makes this new development so fascinating. Because if Bower already published what he could legally defend, what exactly would qualify as too risky? According to industry chatter, the unpublished material allegedly dealt with areas that required either documentary evidence that could not be obtained or testimony from individuals unwilling to testify publicly. That does not mean the information is false. It means it could not be verified to the standard required under UK law. And that is a critical distinction. This is not about secret criminal revelations. There is no credible reporting of criminal conduct by Meghan Markle. This is about reputation, relationships, and power, the kind of claims that could trigger lawsuits if phrased incorrectly. One publishing source reportedly described the material as highly sensitive personal accounts from early Hollywood connections and royal transition years. That phrasing alone opens the door to endless speculation, but the reality is more procedural than scandalous. When an author interviews dozens of people, not every interview becomes a chapter. Sometimes accounts contradict each other. Sometimes individuals retract. Sometimes lawyers step in. And sometimes publishers decide that certain stories, even if intriguing, are not worth the financial risk. But here is where things get strategic. Tom Bower has hinted in interviews that he continues to gather information. He has suggested that circumstances evolve. He has implied that the story of Harry and Meghan is not finished. And the phrase Revenge 2 has floated in commentary circles not as a confirmed title, but as shorthand for a potential sequel. If a second book were to appear, the legal context might be different. More public interviews have occurred since 2022. Prince Harry's memoir Spare added new material to the public record. The Netflix documentary series expanded on their narrative. Statements made publicly can sometimes lower legal barriers for authors responding with sourced rebuttals. That is how publishing chess works. You wait, you document, you verify. And if insiders are correct, those 3 unpublished chapters may not be buried forever. They may simply be waiting for conditions to shift. Meanwhile, the Sussex brand has continued evolving. Meghan launched her lifestyle brand, re-entered social media visibility, and pursued media ventures. Harry focused on the Invictus Games and public appearances. Public opinion remains sharply divided. Tom Bower remains sharply critical. He has described Meghan as strategic. He has portrayed Harry as emotionally driven. He has framed their departure from the monarchy as a rupture fueled by mistrust and media conflict. But none of that is new. What is new is the idea that there is more material, vetted, drafted, structured, that readers have not seen. And that narrative alone creates tension. Because the publishing world understands something the public often does not, books are shaped as much by lawyers as by authors. Editors consult legal teams. Paragraphs are reworded. Claims are softened. Footnotes are strengthened. Entire sections can disappear days before printing. If there were 3 chapters removed, that would not be unprecedented. It would be procedural. Still, in a story that has revolved around perception, image, and control, the idea of unpublished material is powerful. It feeds curiosity. It suggests unfinished business. It implies that the public narrative might not be complete. Now consider the royal context. King Charles III is navigating a modern monarchy facing constant scrutiny. Prince William is preparing for eventual kingship while managing family estrangement. Catherine has faced intense media pressure. Harry and Meghan remain outside the institution but linked by title. Every new book reopens wounds. Every new interview reignites debate. And if Tom Bower were to release additional material, even legally careful material, the ripple effect would extend beyond tabloid headlines. Because this is not just celebrity gossip. This is monarchy, media, law, and legacy colliding in real time. There is another layer to this development that cannot be ignored. Tom Bower's reputation depends on credibility. If he were to publish additional chapters, they would need to withstand scrutiny. If he chose not to publish them, it suggests restraint rather than recklessness. And restraint in investigative publishing is often more revealing than exaggeration. The whisper in London right now is not that a scandal is about to explode. It is that material exists that could deepen public understanding of events already debated. That is different from sensational conspiracy. It is about context, about nuance, about what was left unsaid. And here is the final tension point. If those 3 chapters remain unpublished, they continue to function as leverage, not blackmail, not threat, but narrative leverage. The mere possibility of additional revelations keeps the conversation alive. It sustains curiosity. It ensures that the story of Harry and Meghan remains unfinished in the public imagination. And in the Martin media ecosystem, unfinished stories generate the strongest engagement. Tom Bower understands that. The Sussexes understand that. The palace understands that. Which means the real drama is not in what has been printed, but in what may still be waiting behind the curtain. The most powerful element in this entire situation is not accusation. It is anticipation. Because when insiders say Tom Bower has 3 more chapters about Meghan Markle that were considered too legally risky to print, what they are really saying is that the story has not reached its final chapter, and in the modern media landscape, unfinished narratives are fuel. Let's be clear, there is no confirmed announcement of a sequel. There is no official release date. No publisher has declared a second volume. But Bower himself has never ruled it out. He has continued giving interviews. He has continued commenting publicly on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. He has continued positioning himself as a critic of how the Sussexes handled their royal exit and media strategy. And when an investigative author keeps speaking, it usually means the research never stopped. Since the release of Revenge in 2022, the Sussex narrative has only grown more complex. Prince Harry released Spare in January 2023, a memoir that stunned readers with deeply personal revelations about his childhood, his relationship with King Charles III, and his fractured bond with Prince William. The Netflix docuseries added a visual dimension to their account of royal life and press intrusion. Meghan Markle re-emerged with brand projects, interviews, and public appearances that signaled she was not retreating from visibility. Every one of those developments adds fresh public record material, and public record changes legal equations. Because here is the subtle but critical point. When individuals speak publicly about events, they sometimes reduce the legal risk for authors who wish to counter, contextualize, or challenge those narratives with sourced material. The more interviews, memoirs, and documentaries enter the conversation, the more room opens for rebuttal journalism. Tom Bauer is not a YouTube commentator. He operates within traditional publishing. That means manuscripts undergo rigorous legal review before publication. Lawyers examine wording. Claims must be backed by notes, recordings, documents, or on-the-record sources willing to stand by statements. Entire paragraphs can be adjusted to avoid crossing into defamatory territory. So if insiders claim that 3 chapters were withheld, the implication is not that they were reckless or sensational. It is that they may not have reached the evidentiary standard required under UK law at that time. But time changes circumstances. Witnesses who once refused to speak may reconsider. Documents once inaccessible may surface. Statements made publicly can shift the risk calculus. That is how investigative publishing evolves. Now consider the strategic dimension. Tom Bauer's first book had impact. It fueled debate across British and American media. It reignited questions about Meghan's pre-royal career trajectory, her relationships within the palace, and the handling of staff complaints. It challenged the Oprah narrative. It framed Harry as isolated from his traditional support networks. But it was written before Spare, before certain Netflix disclosures, before ongoing public discussions about royal reconciliation. If a second volume were to appear, it would not simply rehash 2022 controversies. It would likely address how the Sussex brand has transformed since stepping back from official royal duties in 2020. There is also the financial context. Publishing thrives on sequels when public interest remains high, and interest in Harry and Meghan has never fully subsided. Every new appearance trends. Every public statement sparks analysis. Every perceived shift in tone, conciliatory or combative, becomes headline material. A sequel framed around what couldn't be published before would generate instant intrigue, but it would also invite scrutiny, because Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have demonstrated a willingness to push back when they believe narratives are unfair. Legal action against British tabloids has been part of their media strategy. Any new book would be reviewed carefully by their legal teams, which brings us back to those rumored 3 chapters. If they exist, they represent more than gossip. They represent editorial judgment, and editorial judgment is where power quietly sits. Let's examine the reputational stakes. For Meghan Markle, perception has always been central. From her early blog, The Tig, to her humanitarian positioning within the monarchy to her California-based entrepreneurial pivot. She has consistently emphasized agency and voice. She has framed her departure from royal life as an act of self-preservation and independence. Tom Bauer's narrative, by contrast, has portrayed her as calculated and image-conscious in ways that critics argue are unfair and supporters argue are insightful. 2 competing narratives, 2 competing interpretations. The public often chooses based on allegiance. If new material were introduced, carefully sourced, legally reviewed, framed as continuation rather than escalation, it could intensify those divisions. But it could also fatigue audiences, because another truth about modern media is saturation. The public has consumed years of royal tension. Sympathy and skepticism coexist. Some readers might eagerly purchase a sequel. Others might roll their eyes at another installment of what they perceive as recycled drama. That is the gamble. There is also the palace dimension. King Charles III has adopted a visibly restrained approach toward public confrontation. Prince William has maintained a firm but largely silent stance. The monarchy strategy has leaned toward dignity through distance. A new investigative volume could disrupt that equilibrium, not because it would necessarily contain bombshells, but because it would revive discussion of internal fractures at a time when the institution is focused on continuity and stability. And the monarchy, unlike celebrity culture, values continuity above spectacle. Tom Bauer understands institutional power. He has written about political figures, business magnates, and royals. He understands that publishing is not just about selling copies, it is about timing. Releasing additional material during a sensitive period could amplify impact. Waiting could minimize backlash. Publishing is as strategic as politics. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle's post-royal identity continues to evolve. Brand ventures, podcast experiments, public speaking engagements, each project reshapes how audiences perceive her independence from the royal framework. Prince Harry's commitment to the Invictus Games anchors his public image in service and veterans advocacy. That humanitarian focus provides stability amid ongoing media noise. Any sequel by Tom Bauer would need to contend with those developments. It would not exist in a vacuum. It would enter a crowded ecosystem of commentary, podcasts, social media discourse, and partisan analysis. And that ecosystem is volatile. There is another layer rarely discussed openly: author reputation. Tom Bower's credibility depends on precision. If he hints at additional material without delivering it responsibly, critics could question his motives. If he delivers it recklessly, legal consequences could follow. So if insiders are correct that he withheld chapters, that restraint enhances rather than diminishes his standing within investigative circles. Because sometimes what you choose not to publish says more about professionalism than what you do. And that may be the quiet takeaway behind this entire breaking update. Not that hidden scandal is waiting to detonate, but that complex narratives rarely fit neatly into one book. Now imagine the scenario in which those chapters are eventually refined, legally fortified, and released, not as inflammatory rumor, but as structured narrative supported by documented sourcing. The conversation would not simply revolve around Meghan Markle's character. It would revolve around media power, legal boundaries, institutional protection, and the economics of controversy. Because at its core, this saga is not only about Harry and Meghan. It is about how modern monarchy intersects with global celebrity culture. It is about how memoirs, documentaries, biographies, and interviews compete to shape historical memory in real time. It is about authors like Tom Bower positioning themselves as counter-narrative forces. And it is about audiences choosing which version of events feels most credible. The phrase "too risky to print" is powerful precisely because it invites imagination. But risk in publishing is rarely dramatic. It is calculated. It is assessed by lawyers reading drafts line by line. It is editors debating phrasing. It is insurance policies. It is potential courtroom cross-examination scenarios. It is less conspiracy and more compliance. Still, the whisper has already done its work. Because once the public hears that something exists but remains unseen, curiosity expands. Will Tom Bower write a sequel? Will those rumored chapters ever surface in revised form? Will Meghan Markle and Prince Harry respond if they do? No official answers exist tonight, only speculation grounded in publishing practice and media history. But in a narrative that has stretched across continents and years, one thing is certain: the story is not over. Whether told through memoir, documentary, biography, or silence, it continues unfolding. And if Tom Bower is indeed still writing, still researching, still archiving interviews and documents, then the next chapter, printed or not, will arrive when timing, law, and strategy align. Until then, the most compelling development may not be what is revealed, but what remains carefully, deliberately, and strategically withheld, and strategically withheld, and strategically withheld, and strategically withheld, and strategically